Okay.
My name is John McCammon. I joined with the United States Navy, served 2 years overseas in Yokosuka, Japan, where I was home ported. I was aboard the USS Oklahoma City. It was a CLG-5, which was the flagship of the 7th Fleet. Our job was to escort the Admiral from port to port. In such time as escort jobs, I got to see Hong Kong, Korea, Philippines, Taiwan, Thailand, Taipei, every island in Japan, Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, crossed the equator 3 times, rode in 3 hurricanes, and injured at middle of my term while working on a pump down in the engine room, was pinned under a pump. When they got me out from under the pump, which I had to use a winch, I spent the rest of my time walking around the ship bent over because of my height. So I never got to stand up, so I never got to heal. I am now a disabled veteran, willing to do whatever it takes. Overseas was different. I mean, the things we did and places we went, you could only have seen them one time in your life, and I have no regrets for the places I've been and the people I met and the places I've gone to. Questions would help me a lot in my speech because I ain't very good.
Okay, so do you want to talk about how whenever they came into the gymnasium again?
Oh, I joined the Navy in 1972. Back then the draft was going on, and I was just going to let them draft me. I mean, my number was low enough and everything, but the military goes to the gymnasium on your senior year, and they let you see what outfit you want to be with. You want to be Army, Navy, Marines, and they got recruits that will promise you everything, but that's all it is promises, because it's all they're wanting to do is get you in there. They get patted on the back for every man they get enlisted. 2 buddies of mine talked me into joining the buddy ship plan. One of them hurt his back in the hay crew, and the other one got on a different bus than I was to take orientation, and they wouldn't take him. So I ended up going. I served my San Diego boot camp. It was really kind of easy.
Where were you stationed at boot camp?
San Diego, California.
Oh, didn't you say that? My bad.
I was dismissed from Treasure Island, California.
How long was boot camp?
6 weeks.
Hard? Or
No,
pretty easy?
for some people it really was. Some people boot camp was more than their life was used to. But if you're in fairly decent shape and you do what you're told and do it when you're told, boot camp really wasn't that hard. I mean, we had people in boot camp that they went AWOL. They'd make certain people mad, and it was away from. I was growing up in the country, never been away from home till I went to the military. I didn't know what people were like, really, because where I come from, you had 60 kids in your high school that you graduated with. You know what Green Ridge, probably like Green Ridge.
Yeah.
Mine was Parker, Kansas, which is a lot smaller than Green Ridge. I loved overseas. That was some of the ports like Korea. When you pulled into Korea, we went to Seoul in Korea, and as you're coming in, it's like a dividing line as far as the eye can see, where you come up to it, and the ocean turns from this color blue to a velvety blue. and you can just look down and see that line and see the change automatic. Like it's like watching it rain on this side of the road, not rain on this side of the road. You know, Hong Kong was different. I got to see a lot of places, hon. Everywhere in the Pacific Ocean is part of my memories, and I can remember every port that I've been into. We took the Admiral into Korea, like for instance. They'd take about 2 to sometimes, depending on how short they was, 2 to 3 guys with rifle marksmanship, which I was in with the rifle marksman. I was raised with guns, and we'd escort the Admiral to the meetings. I mean, full dress. Korea's the only place we had to wear bulletproof vest. Philippines, I mean, there was a lot of partying went on too, with the Navy guys. But my ship, you spent 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. I mean, when you were on duty, and
Where were you first stationed at?
huh?
Where were you first stationed at?
I was home ported. Yeah, my home port was Yokosuka, Japan. You know, been everywhere in Japan. I bought a motorcycle over there, and when we were in port, which wasn't very often, we rode the island of Japan. Me and my friends that had motorcycles. It was just like they do here, from town to city to country. You know, except over there, you got an island that ain't no bigger than. You can do it all in a one-day ride. Vietnam, we did a lot of firing on the line when we had 6-inch guns in the front, and we had heat-seeking missiles in the back. And where I was at, I didn't see what was going on because I was in the engine room making sure the ship went forward and back, you know, what I had to do. But down there, you could hear every time they had to fire them guns. Every division had, you had radar that run the guns. My dad was a gunner's mate in the Navy. He served in Pearl Harbor. So.
What was your specific job title?
Huh?
What was your specific job title?
I was a sniper. I was a fireman. In the engine room, our jobs was to keep track of the gauges, make sure we had the right steam going through the pipes. Like I said, when them pipes go bad, I had to repair it. I had to fix it. And then, you know, there wasn't just the oil pumps that I worked on and everything else, but I had one buddy of mine, he had a motor up on a come-along, and the ship rolled on him, and the come-along broke, and the motor fell down. Shit, we used to see who could get the most broken bones on the ship. He had every finger broke on his from that motor, but you did a lot of work in the engine room. I mean, you didn't get to see, if you wanted to write a letter home or something like that, you went up top and sat on deck and, you know, it was peace and quiet, and you write a letter home. But hurricanes, probably the most scary events I ever had to go through. Because in a hurricane, we went through 3 of them, and you couldn't be in port. You had to be out at sea. And you had to be strapped. If you were standing throttles, you had to be strapped to the throttles. The engine room it was like this size here. It had this big a pipe run right down the center of it. And we maintained that regularly, because if it went, it gave you 6 seconds to clear the engine room. If you wasn't out of the engine room in 6 seconds, you might as well hang it up, you was dead. You know, and we had a leak one time, but we got on Ford fire room, shut it down quick enough that there was no damage. Throttles, when you're strapped to throttles, you just ride it out. We've twisted shafts in hurricanes. We had one destroyer over there, and I think it was called the Gurkey, that in one of the hurricanes, it went up and down and up and down. About the third time up and down, it went down and didn't come back up. Because once water goes into them stacks, it'll sink you.
Yeah.
You know, so hurricanes was about the scariest. Crewmates, they were pretty easy to get along with. I mean, you had to stand your ground no matter what you did. You know, and, I mean, if they were your friends, they were your friends. And if they didn't like you, you'd solve it your own way.
How long were you over in Japan?
2 years, a little over 2 years.
Did you get to
Huh?
Did you get to adventure in Japan?
Did I?
Adventure, did you go walk the streets?
I've been all over Japan. There's not a place that I haven't been on a motorcycle. You know, me and a few friends of mine used to go adventure through some of the parks. I mean, there's some really neat stuff in Japan to see. That was a little 70, how many years is that? 40 some years ago? I have trouble remembering yesterday. There's some stuff about the equator. We had to cross it. When you went into the equator, you came on at a polywog and you left a shellback. Now, a polywog's a landlubber. Shellback's someone that's been initiated. Initiation, well, we went twice, and I'm glad I did, because the first time I got the initiation. And it's just a deal the Navy does for the people across the equator. I mean, I could describe some of the stuff, but it sounds morbid. You know, I didn't have Vietnam that a lot of my friends, I got a lot of brothers that served in Vietnam, that really seen more than I seen. And I've got a lot of them that I know that was left behind, that you remember them, that, you know, actually did the land fighting. Mine was sea fighting, and the Navy, don't get me wrong, the Navy is they stand up for what's right. I mean, if they're called in for artillery backup, they could plant shells within millimeters of the location that they were called into. The time I had was all spent. I think I spent more time at sea than I did on shore. So if I went to shore somewhere, it was like I said, to escort the admiral. He had different ambassadors he had to talk to in meetings, and we just spent a lot of time out at sea, hon.
How did the people in Japan look at you guys?
What?
How did the people in Japan look at you guys? Were they friendly or?
Japan hated the United States because Vietnam was when was World War II fought? Vietnam started in 65, 64. So World War II would have been, Korea was after World War II, and then Vietnam, because Korea and Vietnam came in together. They still, they didn't like the Americans over there, but since they lost the war, they had no choice, and that's just, how would you like it if Japan would have beat us in the war, and they would have been here in the United States, you know, and you'd have had to put up with that. I mean, you'd have done it because that's the way people are. They always, it's called surviving.
Were they hostile?
There was times when I left my ship, they was bringing we was a flagship which only held about, I think we had 3,000 men on my ship. And right before I left over there, they brought the Midway in, which was an aircraft carrier which the aircraft carrier, you're talking 7,000 men. If we came into port and the aircraft carrier was sitting in our dock, they had to get up and move out of our way because we were the flagship. But the Midway was taken over as the flagship when I left. And they had Japanese police circle the base with the American Shore Patrol and MPs because of the rioting that was going on when Japan found out the Midway was coming in for flagship. They was unsatisfied with our ship, but they didn't want a bigger ship taking its place.
Did you get to try any of the food in Japan?
Huh?
Did you try any of the food in Japan?
I love it. I tried food in every port in the Pacific. I tried Japanese sushi. I had one guy took us out on a boat one time, and we caught a tuna, and he cut the tuna up right there on the boat, put some kind of sauce on it, fed us the tuna right there on the sailboat on the fishing boat. Sushi and bars. Hong Kong, I went and ate on top of Victoria Peak, which is the tallest peak in the middle of Hong Kong. You had to take like a trolley car up to the top just so I could try the real Chinese food, you know. I think I had sweet and sour pork up there, and I still ain't found anywhere in the United States that made it the way they made it. I learned how to ask for a glass of water because my first time in a restaurant, they wanted to know what I wanted to drink, you know, with their signs, and I didn't know how to say it, so I'd point at the fish tank and go like that. And they, you know, and the friend behind me says the same as, you know, I learned a lot of Japanese when I was over there too, like mizu means water, you know, so I learned to ask for a glass of water instead of fish water. Japan, all the islands, Philippines, they had delicacies in the Philippines, and I had to experiment. Korea, they had little, of course it could have been monkey, all I know, but they had meat on a stick, and it was barbecued, and it was really good. And Vietnam and Sahib, when I was over in Sahib, which is, here's Vietnam on this side. Vietnam it's not a wide island. I mean, you could walk across it in a day. But they wouldn't let us park on one side where the heavy artillery was because there wasn't a port to pull into, and on the other side there was a port to pull into. And I had pizza. You know, it was buffalo meat, water buffalo, I mean. But it was actually good. Everything, I mean, the delicacies were there. The food was great. If you was willing to be gutsy. I mean, there's a lot of people who won't try nothing, but I was raised if you eat it, you like it, eat it. If you don't like it, don't eat it. You know, but try it. You know, they don't hurt to try something once, and some of the delicacies were just take a goose egg. The Philippines bury a goose egg for 6 months right before it's ready to hatch. Then they serve it in their restaurants. It's called a bloot. Everybody knows what a bloot is. It's a goose egg. It's been buried for 6 months.
Did you try it?
No. I can honestly say I didn't, but in our equator crossing, we were teased that we did, but they didn't really make us. My life in it was down below a ship. It was 140 to 150 degrees was the hottest it ever got, and it never got any cooler than 140. And you had blowers that brought the air from down from up top that cooled our engine room off as cool as it could get. It was like sitting in opening up a motor or opening up the engine hood of your truck and getting inside and sitting around that motor. And you're right there in the heat. The closest we fired one time, I went to the cafeteria from the engine room. I knew they fired because when you're down there, you can't miss it. And there's a bulletin board right before you get your dinner where lost keys, pictures of this, pictures of that, something that somebody wanted to put. There was a picture of a ship on the bulletin board, and here's the stacks on the ship. Here's a missile going right here between the two stacks. We had fired a heat-seeking missile. It went up, circled around, and came back at us. And that's how far it missed from sinking us.
Ooh.
Yeah. But I wasn't out. I was in the engine room of a ship. We were bringing a lot of bodies back. I was there at the end of more or less because I went in 72 when I went in, and I got out in 70, almost 75. I got out in 74. Lost my train of thought. You know, we weren't welcome back. Vietnam shouldn't have happened.
Why did it happen?
Why did Vietnam happen? A bunch of people got together and decided they wanted to start another war. It was supposed to be police action, just like Korea.
So there was really no purpose?
No. There was really no purpose for Vietnam. Other than this guy didn't like that guy and didn't want to be told what to do. Americans keep their nose out of it. We weren't even supposed to stick our nose in it.
What was your best experience while you served? What was your best experience when you served?
My best experience. Getting to see all the beautiful countries I got to see. Thailand, Taiwan, Taipei, Philippines, Hong Kong. Seeing all the countries, spending time in it, spending 2 weeks. I spent at least 2 weeks in each one of the countries I was in. Got to venture around. I mean, what would you say that was kind of an experience?
Yeah.
You know, getting to see things that you normally wouldn't have got to see if you wouldn't have went in. I got no regrets for going in. I wished I'd have went ahead and let them draft me because I was too tall. I was 6'8", and they had to come on the ship and take pictures of me with my head stuck up in the rafters, in between steam pipes. There was no place on that ship I could stand up, except for outside. You know, and the countries, your best experience. Like I said, Vietnam, it was over with, and we had to cargo back a bunch of coffins. And one time we had over 100 coffins on the ship. And that's you got freezers. That's in there with you got to keep them froze. So you got your food department mixed with this. I mean, it wasn't like it sounds. It was quarantined off to certain areas, but.
Yeah. How was the food?
Huh?
How was the food on the ship?
We had lobster.
So not bad?
The first time in my life I ever ate lobster was on a naval ship out at sea. And it was the biggest lobster I have ever ate. And I've been to every Red Lobster is in the United States, and they found I want to go to me and Mom want to go out to the west, out there, where do we say? to, just so I can get lobster. I want to find someone that serves as good as they did. That was we had the Navy had good food. I mean, we go out partying, come back and partying. I mean, we'd go to the Air Force part of the base because the Air Force food was better than the Navy food. But everybody in there that served knows what they did for fun, what they did for their job, the responsibilities they had to carry. I mean, everybody knew all what they had to do. And as long as you followed the procedures and did everything, I mean, you had the good times and the bad times.
Were you and Grandma already together when you joined, or no?
No, I met your grandma. The first night I met her, I was in my Navy blues. I was home from boot camp, and when you get out of boot camp, you're allowed 20 days before you have to go to your next place. And I met your grandma to dance in Paola. She was engaged to be married, and I was going overseas, and the guy she was engaged to was a friend of mine, so that's how I met her. And then when I came back from overseas, I went to the same dance. As soon as it wasn't much longer after I got back from overseas, went to the same dance, and your grandma was there sitting with her sister while her fiance had broken up with her. And I danced with your grandma, and we've been together ever since.
Oh.
It's to us it was romantic, but to a lot of people it's just, I'll leave things in the past. There's a lot of stuff that happened that I don't want to explain. I don't want to talk about, that. I'll tell you that the hurricane was the hardest I ever been in. Crossing the equator was, it was just like getting initiated into any club. You got some kind of initiation they do to you. But you had to do it. We had one guy that signed a chicken shit list, and he stuck his head out, and when he did, somebody hit him with the shillelagh, and he jumped overboard because he wasn't going to be initiated. A lot of people thought it was more pain than it was, and it really wasn't. Because once you crossed it, they let you, you're covered, and you got to go through a coffin that's full of food that the cooks have been saving for 6 months to a year, garbage, that they put in a coffin you have to crawl through, and then you get out of there, and baby you sitting there, King Tut, King Neptune was sitting there, and you had to welcome yourself to King Neptune, and then you was a shellback. Then you got to jump over and clean up. It was, military life for me wasn't what a lot of my fellow brothers went through. Your Uncle Jim, I guess, put it that way, he's probably suffered worse, him and your grandpa, with the war than me or Uncle Bill or, a lot of them. But they were right in the middle of it. I was at the end of it. I seen it, I served it, I'd do it again tomorrow if they wanted me. You got one life to give, and that's to your country. Other than that, I'm proud of my country. I'm proud of serving it. When I see people putting it down, it makes me angry. And there's a lot of people that don't understand our country no more, not like it used to be.
How were you treated when you came back?
How was I changed when I came back?
How were you treated?
How was I treated? You didn't wear your uniform home. You was a baby. They still, for years after all Vietnam was a bunch of baby killers, and they didn't care what you were. The Navy killed just about, with the bombs we had to drop and the missiles we had to shoot. We was as big a baby killers as anybody that shot with a rifle. So we were treated as the same as anybody that came home. Nobody, we weren't supposed to be there. There was a war that should have never happened. You know, we went over there. They didn't come to us. I mean, this Afghanistan. I mean, when they flew the planes in, took out the place in New York, they started that war. We didn't start Vietnam War. We just stuck our nose in it. You know, that was. It was. I mean, if you went on with your life once you got out and didn't go around and talk about military where they didn't know you was in, people just kind of ignored it and went away. I mean, it wasn't until a few years ago that Vietnam War got recognized. I mean, it's a shame that all them guys that's come home for fighting for their country and living homeless around the world because country didn't take care of them when they came home. And that's the sad part. You know, wish they did better care of taking care of the people that they did bring home, because there was a lot of people that came home with no legs, no arms. They're doing a better job now than they did back then, taking care of the people. But it was a war right after Vietnam. It was a bunch of college kids got kidnapped on an island, and they went in there. I can't remember which that was. It wasn't really a war. It was a skirmish. After that, they started recognizing it. I've got people in my history that my family's always been. I got you got great uncles in Branson on that. They got a wall in Branson where they put people up that killed in action. You got two uncles on that wall in there. Great uncles. Your great grandfather was.
Is there anything you can think to add?
I'm sorry that the war even went on, but what I did was nothing to brag about. You know, it was something anybody'd do. It was. I wished I went in a different branch of service. I mean, I'm not ashamed of being in the Navy, but my height, it wasn't good for me. You know, I was just too tall for the Navy. That's why I can't hear. My hearing aid came out. Didn't you see it flopping out over there?
No.
Okay, now I can hear you. I knew something was, it just didn't feel right.
Yeah. All right.
But when they fire, you know, that's why I got bad hearing now, because when they fire the guns, it's like you being in a metal can, somebody beating on that can with a sledgehammer. You know, it's just, you're inside it. I've been seasick a couple times, when I first went out. I don't know what to tell you, babe. I wished I could give you the kind of stuff you're looking for.
You've done fine. So, like, does like being on like a boat scare you now? Like, does being on a boat like bring back memories, or have you like been on a boat since?
I've been trying to get your grandma to go on an ocean cruise. I loved it out there. It was the most calm, peaceful. Being out at sea, sitting up on deck writing letters, little fish flying away from the ship. I loved it out at sea. I mean, you can't, except for rough weather, but other than that, I mean, it was awesome. And you didn't have to spend a whole time in the engine room. I mean, you had duty for like just like going to a job. You know, you go to a job, you work 8 hours, you're off. Same way. You had so many people that had to stand duty, and once their term was up, they had the rest of the time to wander around, venture around. My ship was decommissioned in '74. Australians took it over there. I've been in the admiral's cabin, just adventuring around the ship. The most beautiful woodwork you'd ever seen. They took it over, and Australians used it for target practice, and they sank it to the bottom of the sea. You know, that's how when they decommission something, and they got Oklahoma City goes back. I think there was 4. I'm not sure. I think it was 4 Oklahoma cities from earlier years of Japan to mine being the last one. But each one of them, mine was a flagship. It was the CLG-5. It was the flagship 7th Fleet. I know I'm repeating a lot of this stuff.
You're okay. Got anything you want to add?
Well, what I can tell you, what
It's okay.
it wasn't a war. It was a war, but it wasn't. It was the end of Vietnam. I mean, by 74, 75, it was over there.
Yeah.
So I got in on the last 2 years. Like I said, I got a lot of family that started over there. A lot of people I know that started back in '60. Had one ag teacher that went in '62, He was one of the first ones over there. Brother was in there in '67 through '69. And their memories are a lot stronger than mine. Because mine was, I'll say, more party than it was work. That don't sound very good, but
Grandpa was a partier.
well, I mean, you go into port, you're there for 2 weeks. You take your tour duty with whoever had the admiral escort, and if you didn't have the admiral escort, you had 2 weeks to kill in a port while he did what he had to do. And in that 2 weeks, you seen every part of the island. You ventured out and tasted all the cuisine that was out there. A lot of different bars. I mean, they make these these ports. It's like they know the Navy's coming, or the Army, or the Air Force. So let's build this one strip. And they got this strip that's probably as long as Main Street and every bit. That every store is a bar. They want you to drink, I guess. Did a lot of drinking. I'm sorry.
All right.
I wished I could give you some real kind of hellacious war story. Let me stand up. Some kind of war story, but I can't because my war story was down in the engine room.